people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this fight that was recently announced between veteran fighter Diana Fernandez and up-and-comer, unbeaten up-and-comer, Nayeli Rodriguez, set to go down south of the border in Mexico at the end of this month in Juarez for what is a WBC silver title that can be used as a segue to fight for a full one in what is a significant step up in competition for young Nayeli, who sports a professional record of 6 wins with no losses and 1 draw, no recorded knockouts. One of the better young up-and-comers I've seen in recent memory. I was thoroughly impressed with her performance against Nat No Love Dove on the undercard of an MVP show. She'll be facing the veteran Diana Fernandez, who sports a professional record of 35 wins with 4 losses, 1 draw, 5 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 40 professional bouts, not just another pretty face. Last in action in July of this year, opposite the ring, Alondra Nava, who she decisioned over 10 rounds in what was her second ring appearance this year. The first was in February, the second was in July, and the third will be at the end of this month. So Diana has no ring rust that she needs to shake off. She fought 3 times last year, and she is set to fight 3 times this one. But that's not to say that young Nayeli Rodriguez has been asleep at the wheel. Having debuted as a professional in August of last year, she fought 2 times last year, and she's fought 5, count them, 5 times this one. Once in February, once in April, once in May, then again in July, then again last month. So is she really ready for a fighter that is as experienced, as capable as Diana Fernandez? Being honest with you, this is a huge step up in competition for Nayeli, bordering on foolhardy. No, I'm not about to make any bold proclamations when it comes to this one. I don't know with any certainty that Nayeli is ready for this in spite of her decorated amateur background. The amateurs are one thing, and the pros are quite another. Granted that Diana Fernandez has already been beat 4 times. 2 times by Barbie Juarez, 1 more by Barbie's younger sister, Lourdes, and 1 more by former champion of Argentina, Deborah Dionysius. Now that loss, Diana actually avenged. That loss, she got her lick back. What all 3 of those fighters who beat Diana have in common is they did all compete at world level, champion level. They were either champions or former champions, which young Nayeli is not. She's a bright up-and-comer and she's very talented, but I don't actually know that she wins this fight. I don't know that she's ready for this against the veteran of 40 professional bouts, when she herself has never even fought in a 10-rounder. The longest that Nayeli Rodriguez has fought for is 6 rounds. As opposed to Diana, who's been in 10-rounders on so many occasions, more than I can count off the top of my head. Like I said, this is a step up in class for Nayeli that is bordering on foolhardy. Now, because Nayeli is so young, she's only 24, a loss south of the border would not be the end of the world for her. She can recover if she does lose, though losing is a distinct possibility against a fighter who's gone the distance so many times with so many fighters, many of which are more experienced than Nayeli is now. This could be a banana skin, a genuinely intriguing fight, because I identify Nayeli as perhaps being more talented than a Diana Fernandez, though nowhere near as experienced. So that sort of balances things out. We'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches. In men's junior middleweight news, the continued fallout of what could be the Ennis versus Ortiz fight's collapse. A Twitter user who goes by the name Believe in Jesus Christ said, "I'm going to be so disappointed if Ortiz fights Errol Spence Jr. instead," to which veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael responded, Not gonna happen, per source. DAZN, which has dibs on Ortiz's fights, will not allow that fight to happen. DAZN is exerting intense pressure on Golden Boy Promotions to get the Ennis fight done. Dan Raphael is not the only one singing that tune. Veteran boxing scribe Stephen Kimothy said, "Call me naive, and I've been called much worse. I think this fight gets done. The bottom line is, DAZN has to get it done." And currently in this marketplace, DAZN actually has the leverage. It's not like they are competing with anyone for fights in the United States. While true, DAZN is the only major broadcaster right now pouring money into boxing in this country. I do not believe that guarantees that we get Ennis versus Ortiz next. Call me cynical, because I've been called worse. But I don't think for a second we get that fight on that kind of time frame, that kind of schedule. No, sir. Not with Golden Boy Promotions involved. No, I don't think it's going to be Errol Spence Jr. either. I don't think we get Virgil Ortiz versus Errol Spence for a myriad of reasons, because Errol hasn't fought in close to 3 years, has not yet hired a new trainer. It's not going to be Spence. Because Virgil Ortiz is not the kind of guy you fight under those circumstances. 2 years removed from the sport, coming off a crushing defeat without a new trainer because DAZN doesn't want to pay for it. It's not gonna be Spence. Not that I get the sense that Errol is itching to come back. His ass is snapping at the grass to put the gloves on again. I don't think it is. Golden Boy Promotions probably invited him to be at this past weekend's fight, and he took the invitation, but that does not guarantee that he will face Virgil Ortiz next. I don't even really think he wants to. I don't think he wants to fight. It's not gonna be Errol, if for no other reason than the money. If Errol were seriously entertaining the idea of coming back to the sport of boxing under these circumstances, the only real motivation would have to be the money. And without that, it just doesn't go down. It doesn't happen. It's not a fight that I think Turki El Sheikh would pay for, and it doesn't seem to be a fight that DAZN wants to pay for. So without somebody to pay for it, to pony up a lot of money for Errol, I don't think he does it. It won't be him. I don't know, maybe if the PBC were to pay Errol and DAZN were to pay Virgil and they did it as a co-promotion, maybe? And that's a big fucking maybe, because that still relies on Errol Spence Jr. wanting to fight Virgil Ortiz under these circumstances where I don't think he wants to fight anybody at all. I don't think it's gonna be Errol Spence Jr. next, but I don't think it's gonna be Boots Ennis either. I think it's going to be Sebastian Fundora. I understand the point that Dan Raphael and Steve Kim are making, that DAZN has leverage in the situation and they have say-so, but outright, they can't force Virgil to take a fight. They can't force him into the ring with Boots Ennis. They can apply pressure and try to be persuasive. They can do things to urge him and nudge him in that direction, but they can't make him do it. This is not Soviet Russia or communist China. Shay Segev is not Fidel Castro. You understand? It's not a dictatorship over there. And Virgil doesn't have to fight Ennis. They might want him to. And there are other fights that they might reject in place of the Ennis fight. Yeah, they won't approve an Errol Spence Jr. fight. They won't approve that, but they might approve a Sebastian Fundora fight because Sebastian is a world champion, because Sebastian is more or less relevant to today's junior middleweight division. He did fight 2 times this year, and I believe that if Golden Boy Promotions can arrange it with Sebastian's people and present that fight to the people at DAZN, the people at DAZN would approve it. Now, this relies on the cooperation of Sebastian Fundora, but bear in mind that Sebastian's people already make nice with Virgil's people. Samson Lukowicz and Golden Boy Promotions both co-promote Sebastian's sister, Gabby Fundora. And if you've been paying attention, Golden Boy and the PBC are doing a lot of business together. They plan on doing the Garcia versus Barrios fight. Oscar De La Hoya has been hinting at a Benavidez versus Zurdo Ramirez fight for next year. We could end up seeing Virgil Ortiz versus Sebastian Fundora next year. Tack on a potential order from the World Boxing Council, forcing them to the table. Virgil has been WBC interim champion for well over a year now. They may sweeten the pot by having the WBC order that fight, at which point they can then present it to DAZN. Well, what about Sebastian's injury, and what about Keith Thurman? What about rescheduling the Keith Thurman fight? I told you, I don't think that fight is going to get rescheduled. It's not strong enough to be a main event. a standalone main event on its own. It's not going to sell anything. So if you're Sebastian Fundora and Samson Lukowicz, why pour more time into a fight that isn't going to get you any money? Keith Thurman isn't buzzing right now.
Virgil Ortiz is.
You could argue that the Virgil Ortiz fight is a lot more dangerous than a Keith Thurman fight would be, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. Sebastian Fundora has not yet parlayed that alphabet title into a big payday, a big purse, and he's not going to with a Keith Thurman.
They wanted to build the Thurman fight as a pay-per-view. I believe they would take a similar strategy with Virgil Ortiz. They would try to build that as a pay-per-view in the coming calendar year.
Now, if they did, that would shift pressure over to Jaron Ennis to find an equally good opponent in the junior middleweight division. That if Virgil is otherwise preoccupied with Sebastian Fundora, Boots is under more pressure to fight Bakram Murtazaliev.
I don't think they would build that as a pay-per-view. I think Ortiz versus Fundora, Golden Boy would make that a pay-per-view, but Matchroom would not make Boots Ennis versus Murtazaliev a pay-per-view.
And that's how I think it's going to go. Push comes to shove, we are not going to get Ennis versus Ortiz. I think we're going to get Ortiz versus Fundora and Ennis versus Murtazaliev.
Those ain't bad fights, by the way.
It's not that I'm a fanager, one of these fans who fancies themselves a boxing manager. It's just that I'm an old cynic. I don't think we get Ennis versus Ortiz on this schedule, and I don't mind Virgil fighting Sebastian. I don't mind Boots fighting Bakram. I look at that as the silver lining in all of this, that even if we don't get one fight, one major fight, we might still get two significant ones. And that's all right.
I can live with that. Can't you?
If they told you tomorrow that Sebastian and Virgil will be fighting each other this weekend, you wouldn't want to see it? If they told you that Boots and Bakram are fighting this weekend, you wouldn't want to see it?
Come on.
You and I both know that you and I would both watch it. So that's the way I think it's going to go, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Virgil fighting Sebastian. I'm okay with Boots fighting Bakram, because I do not believe they're going to be boxing each other next. No matter how much pressure DAZN tries to put on Virgil and Golden Boy, bottom line, they can't force him to take a fight. In men's super middleweight news, ahead of his upcoming fight with Anthony Yarde, David Benavidez knows who will give him the harder fight between Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. The future for David Benavidez is looking brighter than ever. The Mexican monster will hope it includes legacy-defining fights against Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. The light heavyweight trio are the best in the division, and as things stand, Bivol leads the way after gaining revenge over Artur. Despite becoming undisputed champion in their February rematch, Bivol's reign as the four-belt king lasted just 2 months. In April, the 34-year-old vacated his World Boxing Council title instead of facing mandatory challenger David Benavidez. His decision elevated Benavidez from interim to full world champion, email champion, as the kids like to say. Benavidez's first defense of his WBC title in Riyadh against Anthony Yarde is just over 2 weeks away. Going into the fight, the champion is a heavy favorite to retain his belt. Should he do so, he may target Bivol or the now beltless Beterbiev. But in an interview with Boxing News earlier this week, Benavidez was asked who he would prefer to fight between Bivol and Beterbiev if there were no titles at stake. I think Beterbiev would be a more fan-friendly fight. It'd be a harder fight. Beterbiev is more of a rugged, in-your-face type fighter. Bivol is more of a, you have to go and hunt him down. I'm willing to fight whoever. I think a more fan-friendly fight would be me versus Beterbiev. That would be a great fight. But even with me and Bivol, that would be a great fight too. I sparred Bivol a lot of times. Many years ago, many years later, they both find themselves champions at the same weight.
Do you agree with him? Do you think that Artur would be the harder fight?
I actually do. Now understand that here and now, I favor both Dimitri and Artur to beat David, but in different ways for different reasons. At the very most, Dimitri Bivol will outpoint you. He will outbox you, but he will not irreparably damage you. I don't think he'll hurt you, knock you out, or knock you down. I think he can outclass David Benavidez. I think he can take him to school, like he took Zurdo Ramirez to school. Similar fight, similar style matchup.
David Benavidez and Zurdo Ramirez have very similar physical dimensions, very similar body types, and I believe that Dimitri would do to David what he did to Zerto, but he would not leave David irreparably damaged. He would not knock David out. I think Artur would knock David out. When David says that Artur makes for a more fan-friendly fight and that he's a more rugged, in-your-face fighter, I have to agree with him. All of that is true, and it's for that reason I think Artur is the more dangerous fight, the more difficult fight for David. David is a pressure fighter, and so is Artur Beterbiev. Both guys have the same sweet spot, and that's mid-range to inside. But at that proximity, I believe that Artur throws the shorter, tighter punches. I believe that he's stronger than David, punch for punch. He does a lot more damage with a single punch, let alone when he's putting punches together. At that range, I might give David Benavidez the edge in speed. David does have good hand speed at that range, but his punches are not always defensible, which is why he got knocked down by Ronald Gavril years ago, why he got caught and knocked down by David Morrell years later. Yes, David has speed, but his punches are not that defensible. He's got longer arms than Artur Beterbiev. Within close quarters, that makes him vulnerable because Artur shoots from the hip. He doesn't load up his punches. He doesn't waste that half a second trying to add power to them. The power is already there, whereas David, he's got longer arms, which make for gaps in between the guard. There's room to sneak punches in there when David puts the earmuffs on. Punches around the side of the guard towards the head, punches up the middle, uppercuts up the middle, body shots, jabs to the diaphragm. That at that range, I'm convinced Artur Beterbiev would overpower David Benavidez. The only caveat is that Artur is many years older than David, so it's like a ticking time bomb. At what point does Father Time catch up to Artur? Because at some point he's going to. It was reported that Artur Beterbiev has now separated from Top Rank. He is a network and promotional free agent. Rumor has it he may pair up with the IBA. Same IBA that used to oversee all of the amateur boxing but lost recognition of the IOC, and thus they don't deal with the amateurs anymore. Now they've thrown their hat in the ring of professional boxing, staging their own events. They even offered to foot the bill for the Beterbiev versus Bivol rematch, and rumor has it that Artur is in talks to be promoted by them. Yeah, I could totally see that because they do a lot of their fights in that region of the world, in proximity of Russia and those places. As David Benavidez entertains either a Dmitry Bivol fight or an Artur Beterbiev fight, as much as I would like to see those fights come into fruition, I am not fully convinced they actually do. There's been loose talk about a David Benavidez versus Zerto Ramirez fight. We know that David's mentioned it on many occasions, moving up to cruiser. We know that Zerto has mentioned it. We know that Oscar De La Hoya has mentioned it. Zerto, compared to those guys, Dmitry and Artur, is a safer fight. And who's to say that David, after the yard fight, doesn't decide to do that? I don't know that David stays at light heavyweight all that long.